First of all, let me all welcome you and thank you for coming this morning to what promised to be a very spirited 2-hour discussion on a very vital issue that faces all of Southeast Asia today, the question of nuclear energy and, of course, energy security. We're very privileged this morning to have with us 4 panelists who will take their sides on this whole question of whether Southeast Asia should go nuclear. Let me just briefly introduce them. To my left, further left, is Mr. Fumio Murata, who flew all the way from Tokyo to be here today. He's the technology executive and head of the International Cooperation Office for Hitachi-GE Nuclear Energy Limited. He's also representative of nuclear business in China for Hitachi in 1996, General Manager of Nuclear Control and Instrumentation Engineering Department for Hitachi Works in 1993, graduated from the Kyoto University with a master's degree of electronics engineering in 1971. To my furthest right is Dr. Weerawat Chantanakome. I hope I didn't mispronounce your name, Dr. Weerawat. He's currently the Councillor on Energy Policy Planning, Ministry of Energy in Thailand, and former Executive Director on the ASEAN Center for Energy. So he's spent 5 years in Jakarta since 2004 and has over 25 years of experience and expertise in the energy sector, and currently is going around Southeast Asia to promote the position of the Thai government in terms of its energy requirements. To my immediate left is Mr. Tara Buakamsri. He is the campaign manager for Greenpeace, Southeast Asia, based in Thailand. He joined Greenpeace in 1998 and was also one of its founding members for Southeast Asia. He will take a quite strong and vigorous position against the nuclear option. He launched in 2007, Tara launched the Greenpeace Mobile Climate Clinic and accompanying handbook for people to, this is interesting, to calculate the amount of CO2 emissions that they are individually responsible for through the course of any given day. Might be a good idea, Tara, to talk a little bit later about your handbook and how we might be able to purchase it. And to my immediate right, excuse me, is Professor Gopi Rethinaraj. He's assistant professor here at Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. Joined in 2005. Received his PhD in nuclear engineering from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Before coming to Singapore, he was involved in research and teaching activities at the programs in arms control, disarmament, and international security, a multidisciplinary teaching and research program at Illinois devoted to military and non-military security policy issues. Very interestingly, Professor Gopi was not always an academic or a bookworm, but was a journalist as a science reporter for the Mumbai edition of the Indian Express from 1995 to 1999, where he has been writing on technology, science, security issues for various Indian and British publications. And he's currently here at the school teaching on topics as varied as energy security, climate policy, energy technology assessment, nuclear fuel cycle policies, and international security. I'd like to make mention also members of our panel in the audience who will help us along with our 2-hour discussion. May I introduce Dr. Benjamin Sovakol. He's a research fellow at the Center on Asian Globalization who is organizing and sponsoring this event. Not sure if Mr. Howard Choi is here, one of the biggest supporters of this program and of the school. He's the executive director of the Singapore Environment Council. Howard, are you here? Well, he'll come in due course. Some of them are probably coming from the Raffles Convention Center. And we're waiting for David Tan, who's the Deputy Chief Executive of the Energy Marketing Authority. Part of our confirmation list included, also, I'm sorry, forgive me. Dr. Weerawat has been accompanied by Dr. Tanis Surachikul. Dr. Tanis? Yes. He's also with the Ministry of Energy Policy in Thailand, who has graciously joined us here today. And I understand they're rushing off to Phuket tomorrow for another round of consultations on this very important issue. Okay, I think we should start. This is the process that we will follow, since we have 2 hours, we will begin with Dr. Weerawat. He's going to give us an overview of energy requirements in Southeast Asia. So he'll give you a regional perspective, but he also said that he will touch on the global perspective. And having been an executive director for ASEAN Energy Center, he is very well versed in the energy requirements of Southeast Asia. Followed by Mr. Fumio Murata, who's going to give a presentation on the benefits and costs of nuclear energy, and also the projects of Hitachi on nuclearizing the rest of the region, both in the planning stage and in the operational stage. Followed by Mr. Buakamsri, the NGO perspective, and specifically the Greenpeace perspective on why Southeast Asia should not go nuclear. And then we will have Professor Gopi, who will give you a presentation on trying to approach a balance between these various options and what are realistic in terms of what can be promoted to policymakers and decision makers to address the question of energy security. We hope our panelists in the audience will also we invite them to put forward their views and opinions. And after the presentations, then we will go directly to the Q&A, and I hope you will come up with your interesting and tough questions. Our timekeeper, Dr. Toby Carroll, our overqualified and overpaid timekeeper, will let the presenters prompt them 5 minutes before your time is up. We'd like to keep the presentations within 10 to 12 minutes because we really would like to engage our audience in a vigorous discussion with our panelists. If there are any questions about the process, we can begin. Okay, Dr. Weerawat, please.
Thank you, Dr. Tess. So good morning, distinguished and honorable delegates and guests, our speakers here today. So thank you very much for your invitation. Once again, that I visit NUS, and thank you for the organizer, Lee Kuan Yew, School of Public Policy of the NUS, as well as EMA, who invited Thailand to join this very important and timely meeting. As Dr. Tess mentioned, this issue is not easy, but not too difficult if you convey it properly. My task today is to update all of you on the nuclear perspective in ASEAN and in the region. Whether we're going to go in which direction, then we're going to hear more speakers to go to the point where technology going to be, public acceptance going to be. So with that, Chairman and distinguished guests, delegates here, actually nuclear was mentioned long ago in ASEAN, even in Asia, as you know, but in ASEAN it's our new things. Therefore, during the Cebu meeting, during the ASEAN summit and also during the ministerial meeting on energy in Philippines, energy security and energy diversification has been discussed, among others, renewable energies, etc., etc. But nuclear was raised because of the supply of security is an issue. And then, as an outcome of the meeting in Cebu, our minister, even the leaders, tasked senior officials to think about nuclear by trying to establishing the nuclear safety regime through the working group, namely Nuclear Energy Safety Subsector Network, and led by Singapore at that time. The Nuclear Energy Safety Subsector Network is supposed to be part of the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation every 5 years. And then minister tasked senior official, meaning that up to the permanent secretary of Energy Ministry, to think about the preparation of the term of reference, or TOR. And after that, many meetings were convened, moved from one capital to others, in order to finalize the term of reference as assigned by our ministers and even the leader. And of course, Singapore proposed to prepare the term of reference, and many meetings were convened. And finally, during the last ministerial meeting in Bangkok just 2 months ago, maybe you have heard in Bangkok. Malaysia was invited to draft TOR as well. I would say now we stick to the Malaysian version. And then, again, the meeting was convened. Another meeting was convened by organizing the working group nominated by SOME, by senior official on energy in ASEAN. But finally, we have problem by inability to settle the issue because of the principal differences in terms of concept and approach, how we're going to go for what we call nuclear safety regime. And the word regime is really allergic, to some member states. So as a neutral body, we try to, on behalf of ASEAN at that time, we try to still move, because this is the assignment from the leaders and minister. So then we try to discuss further and further. Still, TOR could not be finalized. And finally, the latest meeting proposed to impose the moratorium of the nuclear energy safety subsystem network, but still not finalized. They just proposed to impose the moratorium, meaning stop for a while. And even the rename of the NESSN to NESSN, meaning that from nuclear energy safety subsystem network to nuclear energy subsystem network. Nuclear energy subsystem network, NESSN. Currently, there are a couple of countries in ASEAN add on or add up nuclear power plant schedule into their PDP or power development program. For example, alphabetically, the one who's going to go for real is Indonesia. As you know, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam, of course, Thailand, and perhaps Philippines look into it right now. And lately, Cambodia announced to build up the nuclear power plant about 2020, somewhere in Cambodia. So you can see that this is a thing that, that domino idea. One build up, another one think about it because of the security. But in ASEAN, as you know, we are very small and we have a very good solidarity. That's why when we move something, we have to discuss at length and crystallize clear first, contradict to EU or other continent, right? Then lately, the latest situation is that since term of reference could not be finalized and even could not be completed before the organization of the next ASEAN summit in Bangkok next month, this was tasked by minister. Therefore, the next step is the current country coordinator, Singapore, request Thailand as a ASEAN chairman, as you know, as a SOM chairman this year, to report to the next ministerial meeting will be convened in Mandalay in August, approximately in August 2009, in order to settle this issue of the TOR and other issues that I just mentioned. But before Mandalay in 2009, August, we may raise this issue to the next special summit, which will be convened in Bangkok in May 2009, so that we're going to move on. So with all that, ladies and gentlemen, apart from ASEAN, we have also ASEAN +3 cooperation, where Korea proposed to prepare the nuclear roadmap for ASEAN +3 along with CDM, because Japan, if I'm not mistaken, Japan moved CDM toward nuclear as well, but depend on UNFCCC. We can discuss this later on. So in Mandalay, in August 2009, you may hear the progress of the ASEAN nuclear and ASEAN +3 nuclear at the same time in Mandalay, in Myanmar. So in summary, in the region, especially ASEAN, I would say that nuclear is just an option. It is option because of our urgent supply security need to be secure. There are many drivers to nuclear, as you know very well, controllable and uncontrollable. So I would share with you here that for the uncontrollable factors, political will is one and very important issue. When you change government, you never know. And also public acceptance is another issue that make balance on the political view. So with all that, if the question came, should we go for nuclear or not, to my personal perspective, from my experience, this time, because the world changed, big change, if you move on to study nuclear, please do not stop. If you stop, you're going to move it very difficultly, or very hardly, or very difficult. You're going to have very kind of difficulty to move it again if you don't keep momentum. So if one country starts, just move on. Build or not is another issue. Human resource, technology study, research and development, and public acceptance gradually need to be moved on, because you cannot avoid this option, I think, in the future. So in my conclusion, once again, before you make decision or before you move on, you have to move on with the careful steps. Make sure that all parties concerned, and then you decide whether you're going to go for it or not. This is my perspective on nuclear. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Weerawat. I'm sure there will be a number of questions from the audience on how you move from uncontrollable to controllable, and making sure that we are discussing more in depth also the issue of nuclear safety. Okay, may I call now on Mr. Fumio Murata, who is going to discuss and present to you the advantages of the nuclear option. Mr. Murata, please.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Professor Tess, for your kind introduction. And I'd like to present about the advantage of nuclear power generation. And the contents of my presentation, I have to. Okay. Okay, I understand. Thank you. The contents of my presentation is 5 topics. One is nuclear power generation is one of the best solutions for energy demand. The second topic is nuclear power system. The third one is continuous construction of nuclear power plant in Japan. The fourth one is advanced boiling water technology, the state of art. Finally, further technology, future technology. So 10 minutes. 10 minutes. And the first I'd like to talk about nuclear power generation is one of the best solutions for energy demand. This picture shows the prospect of peak power demand of 4 countries in Southeast Asia: Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia. Their data depend on the the data depend on these documents. And from 2005 to 2020, peak power demand will remarkably increase. Totally, in 2020, will be almost 3 times of 2005. To fulfill demand, these countries will have to augment their electric power generation capacity. That is, they will have to continuously construct power plants in near future. And I think change of electricity source in Japan will be instructive and informative for these countries. The oil crisis in 1973 changed the industrial structure of Japan. Especially, it remarkably changed the source of electricity generation. 2 circles show changing share of electricity generation from 1973, before the oil crisis, to 2007. As a result of continuous effort to avoid dependence solely on oil, the share of oil has decreased from 70% to 12% in these years. On the other hand, the share of nuclear energy and LNG and coal energy remarkably increased. This picture shows the result of the projection of power generation volume by source in Japan from 1986 to 2016. As the same as the last figure, we can see the degree of dependence on oil has been continuously decreased and will decrease. The portion of nuclear power is increasing, and it will reach 44% in 2016. And now I'd like to compare generation cost of various electricity source in Japan. This bar chart indicates the generation cost of yen per kilowatt hour for 5 various sources. As you can see from this chart, generation cost of energy-fired, coal-fired, and nuclear are much smaller than those of hydro and oil-fired. For upper bars, in case of the operating period, be 40 years. Nuclear is cheapest in these 5 power sources. The generation cost of nuclear power include nuclear fuel cycle cost, as shown in the table of the right-hand side. And the next picture shows the comparison of various electricity sources from the aspect of energy profit ratio. It is say EPR. EPR is defined as the ratio of output energy to input energy of power plant. Input energy consists of facility energy and operating energy, including the energy shown here. Output energy is the product of installed capacity, capacity factor, and so on. You can easily see from the left bar chart, nuclear is the best in all sources. Furthermore, EPR of nuclear could be much better than 17. And the next picture shows the comparison of the various electricity sources from the aspect of carbon dioxide emission. In this picture, the vertical axis indicates carbon dioxide emission. Carbon dioxide emission intensity in gram per kilowatt hour, and the horizontal axis indicates electricity sources. As you can easily expect, carbon dioxide emission intensity in thermal power generation, including coal-fired, oil-fired, and LNG-fired, are much greater than renewable energy and nuclear energy. And I think now you can understand carbon dioxide emission of nuclear power is very small, same as renewable energy. On the previous 2 slides, you can see solar power and wind power are excellent in EPR. Okay, thank you. And carbon dioxide emission. Unfortunately, power generation cost of solar power and wind power in Japan are 66 yen per kilowatt hour and from 10 to 14 yen per kilowatt hour. They are about 10 times and 2 times of nuclear energy, respectively. The second and the more serious problem is the required site area. In case of substituting 1,000 megawatt class nuclear power plant, solar power plant requires 67 square kilometers, and the wind power plant requires 248 square kilometers. They are area just about a tenth and 1/3 of Singapore total area. This data chart shows summary of those what I explained before. From many standpoint of view, you can see nuclear is one of the most excellent choice for electric energy generation. But I would like to say that each power source has to be developed considering each good performances. And so I'd like to skip some slides. Next topic. This picture shows the very rough sketch of nuclear power generation system. The steam is generated in the reactor vessel and goes to the turbine. The turbine and the generator generates electric power. This is very simple system, and all the system is monitored and controlled from the central control room. This table shows the dominant parameters of advanced boiling water reactor. The electric output is approximately 1,300 megawatt, and the efficiency is approximately 35%. This picture shows the nuclear power plant in Japan. This includes the plant in operation and the construction and the preparing for construction. Totally, 55 nuclear power plants are operating now in Japan, and 32 units are BWR, and 23 are PWR type. This graph shows the historic trends of construction of nuclear power plants in Japan. From the 1970s, Japan has been constructed nuclear power plant continuously. We are now, 2008, installed capacity of nuclear power reached 15 gigawatts. Among these 5 nuclear power plants, Hitachi has been constructed more than 20 nuclear power plants in Japan. Now constructing 2 nuclear power plants. No, 1 minute. So I skip some slide. I will explain in the discussion. And this is one of the picture now constructing in Japan. In future, as a future technology, we already applied ABWR for the nuclear power plant in Japan. And in the future, globalized ABWR and ESBWR will be come to line. And the next generation, we are developing BWR of 18,000 megawatt. This is promoted by Japanese government. This will be in line 2020 to 2030. Okay, my presentation was finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murata. If I can just very quickly summarize what the advantages are of the nuclear option from a technology perspective. It is less expensive compared to renewables. It requires less land area. It's clean compared to oil-fired option, and very high efficiency ratios. From the policy perspective, I think Dr. Weerawat here emphasized that policymakers and the decision makers have to seriously consider controlling the uncontrollable. That is, one is government changes, and second, of course, is public acceptance. Okay, let's go to the non-nuclear option, and I'd like to invite Mr. Tara of Greenpeace here to talk about the renewable option and also why Southeast Asia should not go nuclear. Tara, please.
Thank you, Dr. Tess. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my privilege to be here at the Open Public Forum. This is my first time in Singapore, actually, to address the issue of nuclear energy in the region, in Southeast Asia region. As Dr. Weerawat already mentioned, many countries in Association of ASEAN, Southeast Asia country, or ASEAN, is adopting nuclear as an option. From civil society perspective, generally speaking, ASEAN seem to be in a good position on anti-nuclear in the international level, taking into account the ASEAN Charter that's going to be adopted and ratified in the summit that's going to happen next month. And also the ASEAN Energy Minister meeting in Bangkok in August this year. The most alarming outcome of the meeting is ASEAN active promotion on the use of nuclear power. For example, in Thailand, the milestone had been set for the nuclear power project. It is after 3 decades of unsuccessful initiative. Current effort to set up 2 nuclear reactors by 2020 is also based on firm government commitment. The public money, 1.8 billion Thai baht or 1.6 million US dollar, has been allocated for the Nuclear Power Infrastructure Committee. Is to develop nuclear power plan over the 3-year period to make a decision whether we should go for nuclear or not. And also 20-month feasibility study by the US-based consulting firm, Burn and Roll, already started in Thailand. In Indonesia, we have actually a strong position against nuclear power plant, particularly in Central Java region, where the government would like to put nuclear power plant not far from active volcano Muria Mountain. Last year, together with local NGO, we have a religious leader announced that nuclear power plant is haram in Muslim. It's been forbidden. According to Platt International, the magazine, the newsletter for the power sector, Indonesian central government has failed for 10 years to push plan forward for developing commercial nuclear power. The ambition appear to be differing, not certain. And in Vietnam, it's also planning to have nuclear power plant with combined capacity of 8,000 megawatt. We don't know very much information about Vietnam. And in Cambodia, according to Dr. Weerawat, last Asian Development Bank meeting in Kyoto, surprisingly, Cambodia issued a statement to adopt nuclear, despite ADB actually simply not financing nuclear power project in Asia. So come to the question about should Southeast Asia go nuclear? The answers clearly we should not go into that way. There is a better way to go. In the past year, those who've been pushing nuclear power claim nuclear power will help stop global warming. This seems to be valid if considering Southeast Asia collectively currently ranked 3rd highest in CO2 emission among developing countries after China and India. According to Business as Usual projection, it is indicated that Southeast Asia will increase CO2 emission by 350% by 2050. But nuclear power neither solution nor the answer to the climate change. According to the IEA, in order to contribute a mere 6% in CO2 emission reduction in energy sector, we would need to build 32 new nuclear power plants globally yearly until the year 2015. This is unrealistic. This is not going to happen. If the world can make it, nuclear power, which has a deadly legacy of the past, will be haunting us in the region. The expansion of nuclear power will exacerbate the ever-increasing problem of radioactive waste management. There are already 200,000 tons of waste stored worldwide remaining radioactive for several hundred thousand years. Not to mention about even after 50 years of research, nuclear power is still not safe as numerous incidents and accidents, initially often covered up in the past year, continue to prove. I think, as I already mentioned, instead of following up on the promises made to invest on nuclear, we have some better way to go. In ASEAN, for example, already adopt nuclear, and it's clear that ASEAN has failed to translate the commitment to increase the share of renewable energy in power generation in the region 10% by 2010. That is already on the paper. To the real renewable energy development on the ground. Considering the tremendous risks and costs that accompany the choice of going nuclear, it is clearly the wrong decision to take, especially when clean and safe alternatives are plentiful. Geological instability and governance, maintenance problems in ASEAN context are added to the threat to the inherent risk posed by nuclear technologies. Besides the danger of accident and unresolved issue of nuclear waste storage, building a nuclear power plant involves enormous financial costs. Construction costs for nuclear power plants have increased 270% compared to the year 2000. Competitive electricity price could only be achieved by the price regulation, not direct and indirect subsidy to production of nuclear power. So last week on the screen, we, together with European Renewable Energy Council, launching a report called Energy Revolution, a Sustainable Energy World Outlook. It is a second edition that follows from the first edition that we launched last year. It is a vision and alternative to International Energy Agency World Energy Outlook that will come out very soon next week because IEA will be launching World Energy Outlooks. The report actually generally say and show how developing Asia, including Southeast Asia, tracking climate change by investing renewable energy system and energy efficiencies. That will also help stabilize regional and global economy, including energy costs. According to this report, by 2050, 76% of electricity produced in developing Asia, including Southeast Asia, will come from renewable energy and energy efficiency and decentralized power generation. So I would like to end my speech here by saying that in Thailand, where the most advanced of pushing nuclear among other countries in Southeast Asia, there are two public opinion surveys. The first one is done by Hat Yai University in Songkhla province in the southern part of Thailand. It is includes 14 provinces in the population in the southern part of Thailand, and saying that 76% reject nuclear. Another poll done by Atomic for Peace Agency in Bangkok. It is opinion survey nationally, saying that 36% of somewhere around 40% not sure they will say yes or no to nuclear. This is really a gap of knowledge and public perception among Thailand, and maybe can apply to other countries in the region. So I agree with Dr. Weerawat that we need to get public acceptabilities and get done the process, and we need to open more debate on the choice of energy future for us in the region. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tara. On the non-nuclear side, the objections to going nuclear, I heard are 4 reasons. One is climate change and the contribution of nuclear energy to global warming. He quotes 350% increase in climate change by the year 2050. Second is the radioactive waste management on top of the already existing 200 tons of waste that have been accumulated over several years. Third, of course, are safety issues, issue of nuclear accidents. Fourth is the deadly legacy of the past. It's not as if we haven't had bad experiences with nuclear power, and these are the lessons that should be learned from them. Of course, the record of Japan with 55 nuclear plants currently in operation on top of the ones that you will construct in the next 30 years, as compared to the 2 nuclear power plants that is being proposed in Thailand. Like, let's look at the record there and ask the question of what's the problem. And then finally, of course, cost considerations. Okay, our last but definitely not the least speaker is Professor Gopi, who will try and attempt to give us a balanced portrayal of what are the realistic options that Southeast Asian countries can pursue. Gopi, please.
Okay. Before beginning my brief presentation, I want to add a couple of caveats. One is I don't have any personal or professional interest in promoting nuclear industry, even though my academic background tend to give the impression that I may be promoting nuclear industry for professional or personal reasons. And the other caveat is I had 2 distinct lives in my earlier professional career, one as a journalist. And when I look back what I wrote about nuclear power, most of it would seem like senseless criticism. And still I can see how my former colleagues and in India and also in other places indulge in senseless criticism about nuclear power. So there are 2 groups of people. One, those who indulge in senseless criticism. And then there is another group who engage in senseless adulation of nuclear power, trying to present a view that nuclear power can solve all our energy problems. As it always appears, the truth must be somewhere in the middle. So I'll try to present both the pros and cons of nuclear power and also give my assessment about whether Southeast Asia should go nuclear or not. I think this global map will be more instructive. You can see that most of the dots, the red dots, indicate the presence of commercial civilian nuclear power plants, commercial nuclear power plants. There are about 450 commercial nuclear power plants, and 90%, more than 90% of them are light water reactors, which use ordinary water as a moderator and coolant, and the remaining use heavy water as a moderator and coolant. You can see that the Western world is the one which is mostly populated with nuclear power. And Asia is just beginning to make an impact. And Japan and South Korea, of course, they have a long history of commercial nuclear power because both Japan and South Korea do not have indigenous fossil fuel deposits. So that also explains why South Korea and Japan embarked on an early nuclear expansion compared to China and India, which have adequate coal deposits. But if you go by current policy pronouncements by Indian and Chinese leaders, China and India are likely to add at least 50 to 60 nuclear power plants over the next 2 to 3 decades. And then if you go by the policy intent of a few Southeast Asian countries, we will see at least 2 or 3 Southeast Asian countries building 1 or 2 nuclear power plants during our lifetime. And we'll look at what these implications, what are the implications of these development for public policy. The table in the next 2 slides will be also useful to keep in mind. You can see that the electric capacity of 10 Southeast Asian countries. Of course, Brunei and Singapore happens to be the higher end in terms of per capita electricity consumption. And in terms of electric capacity, you can see that there's a lot of room to grow given the pace of economic growth that is being projected for all these countries. And given that population growth will also be experienced by most of these countries, it is fairly obvious that electricity demand will also rise in the coming years and decades. And there are a lot of countries which are having very low per capita electricity consumption compared to global standards. And this table shows the energy resource endowment of the 10 ASEAN countries. So in terms of oil, you can see that Southeast Asia is not very endowed in oil, so most of it is imported. When we look at gas, Southeast Asia has modest natural gas deposit, especially Indonesia and Malaysia have modest gas deposits. But if you look those numbers, they won't last too long. If Malaysians and Indonesians were to source their electricity production from natural gas, which is considered to be the cleanest among the 3 fossil fuels, they will exhaust the readily extractable natural gas in few decades. And there is a lot of coal, but again, adding more coal to the energy system is going to exacerbate the environmental problems and other concerns about local air pollution and global warming that is already in the news. Then there is a lot of hydro capacity. Southeast Asian countries are very well endowed in terms of hydro capacity. But this is the theoretical maximum hydraulic capacity that one could expect. So it is very unlikely that all these countries will be able to utilize all that theoretical capacity. So even if these countries could use a tenth or even 20% of this, it would be a significant contribution. I'll have a lot of time during the Q&A, so I want to quickly complete a brief summary of some of the pros and cons of nuclear power in the region. Pros, it's quite obvious because rapid economic growth, increase in electricity demand, rising oil and gas prices, and environmental concerns over burning fossil fuels, especially coal, oil, and natural gas. Let me give a global picture about where we stand in terms of fossil fuel combustion. 85 to 90% of primary energy consumption comes from fossil fuels. All the fossil fuels emit carbon dioxide. And so if countries were to address global warming or addressing the CO2 problem, they will have to choose non-fossil sources. And the biggest non-fossil sources are hydro and nuclear. If you look at the global charts, other renewable energy has not even made a significant dent into energy consumption. So even if we increase the current renewable energy consumption by a factor of 10, still it is not going to make a big difference in making the transition from the largely fossil fuel based energy dependence. Among non-fossil, hydro and nuclear represents mature technology. And hydro capacity has its own constraints because in much of the developed world, hydro has basically saturated because of geographical constraints. And then in recent years, public mobilization are presenting significant difficulties for large-scale introduction of hydro capacity expansion, which means we are left with nuclear. Of course, I don't want to present a picture that nuclear is going to be the solution for every problem. Nor do I agree with the contention that Greenpeace and other green lobbies might want to convey the public that you can paint the world with solar panels and windmills and solve the energy problem, because it distracts any meaningful discussion on energy options. Yes, nuclear does have its own constraints. And for that matter, all energy resources have an environmental liability. There is no energy resource that is completely free from environmental liability. So it is ultimately a question of how each society makes trade-offs and makes an assessment of what is best in their own country's context, given the various constraints faced by a country in terms of accessing various energy options. The other pro which I would like to highlight is technology development imperative. There is a natural tendency that countries should not be left behind in this race. It's not just Southeast Asia. If you look at the recent application to the IEA, there are a lot of Latin American countries and African countries and West Asian countries which have expressed interest in nuclear power, even though they have a lot of other cheaper options compared to Southeast Asia. The reason why Southeast Asia may want to consider nuclear at this point of time is, even if it is not going to make a big contribution to solving their energy problems, in terms of developing the human resource base and industrial infrastructure and capacity building, it does make eminent sense. So if you look at the history of all countries which have made a big impact on civilian nuclear power, they all started with small capacity. So they have a couple of decades of learning, experiential learning. And if it suits them, if they are satisfied with the performance of civilian nuclear power, then they would go for an expansion. And if they are not happy with it, then they would freeze at that level. So definitely there is, you can make a very strong case that all major Southeast Asian countries should at least nominally invest in civilian nuclear power, keeping in mind about future requirements. And the other advantage is baseload electricity generation. Currently, fossil fuels and hydropower and nuclear power are the most convenient forms of energy resource which can provide baseload generation. And so in that sense also, nuclear power makes eminent sense. And in more recent times, people have been talking about regional cooperation and regional frameworks for addressing nuclear safety. And Southeast Asia provides a very interesting test bed for exploring this opportunity, because proliferation is not a concern in Southeast Asia due to the universal adherence of all ASEAN members to Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And on top of that, you also have a nuclear weapon-free zone, which makes Southeast Asia more viable from a Western perspective, especially giving technologies which may have proliferation implications. And finally, let me look at the disadvantages. In countries like Indonesia, which suffers from frequent earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, locating sites for nuclear power plants and waste disposal facilities can present a lot of difficulties. But this is not insurmountable. You can always manage this. Geography makes nuclear waste management difficult, but not impossible. And one way to avoid this difficulty is to export Southeast Asia's spent fuel inventories to countries which are willing to accept it as part of their waste management policies. Because Southeast Asia is not going to accumulate huge quantities of nuclear waste, so it can be easily integrated as part of the waste management program of, say, US or Japan or Russia, if there is sufficient economic incentives for these countries to accept the nuclear waste. And then the other problem is the existing weak regulatory institutions and culture of negligence in the regions, and also the lack of expertise. Obviously, this is a source of concern. But I don't think that Southeast Asian countries will not be able to address this and win the confidence of public. Then there is also a cheaper alternative for Southeast Asia, like natural gas, geothermal, and coal in the short run, because you can always cheaply build these power plants. And then finally, project delays and associated cost overruns in countries which are freshly embarking on nuclear power could hurt Southeast Asian countries than developed countries. So these are some of the cons associated with nuclear power. So since I don't have much time, I will stop here and take more questions during the Q&A.
Thank you, Dr. Gopi, and thank you, Toby. That's very, very good time management. We're right on schedule in terms of our presentations and the open forum. Okay, let's go to you, and engage the panel with your questions. May I request that you identify yourself? Senseless advocate, senseless critic is okay too. We're in a safe classroom. I think the tone here of this discussion is that we'd like to consider what are the options, given that we all want to be energy safe and energy secure. I would like to take the prerogative as moderator to ask the first question, if I may. Can I ask Tara, you've heard Dr. Gopi's presentation about both options. I've also heard the pro-nuclear option, and I think what Dr. Gopi is saying is there are management issues can be done, but you also need regulatory institutions. He's not ruling out the nuclear option, neither is he ruling out the renewable option. I think Greenpeace's position is absolutely no nuclear and also coal, right? You're against the coal option. Can we hear your views on this, Tara, please?
So this is speaking from my experience in Thailand and looking at another country in the region and some country in the place where development on new renewable energies is moving very fast. I think pro and con for nuclear option has been valid, and has been ongoing debate in the issue of security of supply in energy policy, especially in Thailand. One of the maybe comment from the pro-nuclear side is that because of most of the time, maybe all the time, when the government in any country, especially for me in Thailand, forecasting energy demand for the future, next 15 years, it's already been over forecasting. So it's like the energy demand has been accumulating year by year, and it's resulting in investment in nuclear, in energy sector, electricity generation. That needs to be sorted out before we make energy planning in power development plan in the country. In this economic recession period, I think we have to looking into this basic parameter to define the energy future for Thailand. There are some group that proposing alternative power development plan for Thailand and try to compare with the government PDP, saying that for the next 15 years, if we are going to do based on demand side management, in reducing energy demand by 20%, and then the massive deployment on existing viable renewable energy option, including small scale electricity generators, and provide incentive for renewable investor in the country by 20% by 2020. So the option to put nuclear in power development plan will be gone. So it means that for the next 15 years, there are alternative energy future for Thailand that not need nuclear power in the planning, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Tara. So he's saying that if you just rationalize the planning for Thailand in the next 15 years, the nuclear option will not even be relevant anymore. Okay, let's open up the discussion to the audience, please. Gentleman in the front row.
Hi, my name is...
Please direct your question to
Sure.
members of the panel. Yes.
My name is Siram Ramakrishna, Vice President Research, National University of Singapore. And this question is directed to Tara. Reason is I'm just happening to read this book right in front of me. And this was title of this book is Nuclear Energy in the 21st Century for the University Students. And I was reading the foreword by Dr. Patrick Moore, who's co-founder of Greenpeace and also the chairman and chief scientist of Greenpeace Spirit Strategies. And I just reading it. I happened to read it last night, and I'm coming here and I'm listening to you. And I want to use this just to explain what he has written, then tell me whether it is actually real or not. What it says is, the blind and anti-scientific opposition to this proposition goes back to the mid-1980s when Greenpeace and much of the environmental movement made a sharp turn to the political left and began adopting extreme agendas that abandoned science and logic in favor of emotion and sensationalism. And then it's a long one. I'm not going to take and read all this. But finally, he concludes, there are about 440 nuclear power reactors operating in 30 countries, producing 16% of the world's electricity. This could be double or triple if the political will were brought to bear on the issue of reducing fossil fuel consumption. I believe that the environment would benefit from moving in this direction. Let's hope the future takes us there. So I'm not even sure whether it is a representative of Greenpeace, but I just happened to read last night. I have no clue about this one, but I wanted to see your reaction, but I also would like to see others' reaction as well.
It may be just for your information, because I met Patrick Moore in Bangkok maybe 4 or 5 years ago when he was presenting, he was representing genetic engineering industry and also logging industry, maybe nuclear industry. Patrick Moore is one of the co-founder of Greenpeace. That's true. And I mean, in the environmental movement worldwide, there is, I mean, someone disagree with something that has been doing for the long time. So not only Patrick Moore, but also some other organizations are now repositioning on nuclear power. For example, Worldwide Fund for Nature recently released one of the report that talking about global footprint, and WWF actually taking out nuclear anti-nuclear word from the report, for example. In UK, one of the scientists, prominent scientists, James Lovelock, Gaia theory, also supporting nuclear and blaming environmental movement as something that very unrealistic on this option. So it is going to be very, very, very difficult for us, I mean, to counter argument those who actually used to be with us, and then going to be it's already be another side. So it's still ongoing debate, and we will keep I mean, keep the debate ongoing, and in the appropriate way. It's not in the emotional way. Yeah. That's my response.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Ben, but Ben is an advocate for non-renewable, for non-nuclear and pro-renewables. I think the question is this position ideological, emotional, sensational, or is it really a viable option?
Well, actually, if you would allow me just to ask the panel a question that I think would better encapsulate my views. And Tara doesn't have to answer because I think he's nicely established his thoughts on the matter. But for the other three panelists, throughout the discussion, I mean, I thank you all for very provocative and informative presentations. I was reminded of a debate about 5 centuries ago when a philosopher named William of Ockham was looking at the evidence in favor of the fact that the Earth revolved around the sun. And he looked on the one hand at theories from Galileo Galilei and Kepler, and he looked on the other hand at the evidence from the Church, which ended up getting more complicated and complicated to create these scenarios in which you could actually prove that, yes, the Earth was still the center of the universe. And Ockham said, when you look at this debate, take the simplest explanation to be true. And he developed what's been called Occam's razor to peel away all of the conjecture. And he concluded that the evidence shows the simplest explanation is Galileo's and others. And I think you can apply that kind of notion to the debate about nuclear electricity and even energy policy. The simplest technology that can meet most of society's energy needs is not nuclear, it's not even wind or solar. It's energy efficiency. Energy efficiency and demand-side management are resources that have immense potential. I participated in a study 2 years ago with the national academies in the United States that found that you could use cost-effective energy efficiency measures to displace all of the nuclear power in New York. There have been other studies I've seen that go even further, as well as those done in Asia, that show that you could probably reduce energy demand, not just electricity demand for energy, by 50% in Asia, let alone offsetting all of the projections that we've seen Fumio and others talk about, where they show energy use tripling by 2030 or 2040. Energy efficiency is also very cheap. Numerous studies have shown that the costs are about 2 to 3 cents per kilowatt hour, which beats all of the options, including wind and solar, which are between 5 and 15 cents. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, energy efficiency doesn't leak tritium into the water supply, like Exelon's nuclear power plants have done in Illinois 3 years ago. It doesn't leak strontium-90 into the Hudson River, like Indian Point's plants do. It doesn't irradiate agricultural fields in milk, like the Chernobyl disaster did. It doesn't force the evacuation of Scranton, Pennsylvania, like 3 Mile Island. It doesn't require an intricate network of uranium mines and mills, which have to then use acid baths to actually extract uranium from the ground to fuel the nuclear power plants. And most importantly, it doesn't require the storage of spent nuclear fuel for thousands of years. And so the question I have for the panel is, why shouldn't we use this very simple resource, energy efficiency, first, before we even talk about nuclear, solar, and wind?
Okay. Well, that was non-emotional, non-ideological, non-sensational. Anybody in the panel want to respond?
I do
Please.
agree with this idea of our delegates. Just a minute. I do agree that energy efficiency is really the way to go. And this is the high, I would say that in ASEAN, I come here to talk about regional. I'm not going to talk about one countries here. But energy efficiency is already been at the top agenda of especially country in ASEAN already, among others. When we talk about energy efficiency, energy conservation, that is the cleanest thing, the way of, cleanest way that we're going to move forward. And I think before we talk about other alternative, I do agree on your issue at all, and really. However, this issue was raised, again, I just mentioned this morning, by the leaders. But among others, in order to diversify all alternative, we cannot avoid talking about all alternative. That's why, while increasing percentage of RE in energy mix that Mr. Thara just mentioned, actually the percentage of increase in RE in energy mix in ASEAN going to be increased in the next 5 years, maybe from 10% to 15%. Nuclear is such an option. That's why we have to go for nuclear as a careful steps before decision is made. But the public acceptance, I come back to this point again, the public acceptance should be conducted hand in hand, if you talk about nuclear, along with the construction plan or along with the implementation plan of the NPP. That is the issue. I think we try to tell all governments in ASEAN that perhaps we have to bring them along with us. Don't just go ahead and leave them alone for a while and then give a big gap. Let them come together to not to make the gap narrow, to narrow the gap. It's not like bring them like at the same level, but while we move on, let them come. So maybe the gap, rather than just go alone, let them here, and then one day into 20 jump. So let them come along. Maybe the gap will be narrow. That is the strategy that perhaps country need to go. And also, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, I think dissemination of the sufficient and true or correct information, two-sided communication is needed to all stakeholders. I don't talk about only community alone, but all stakeholders, because community is only one part of the society. In ASEAN, there are 3 pillars, you see. Community is one, economics and security. So we have to integrate to integrate them all. It is very essential, Madam Chair. And also, Tara talked about poll. I think I would recommend that poll need to be conducted on a regular basis. Please do not rely on the one and forever. You have to conduct on the regular basis to see any improvement to the public acceptance. Why move on everything? Conduct poll on the regular basis. You can see the chain up and down. And also, Madam Chair, not only safety, but I think the HRD, technical development, R&D of the surface nuclear technology for electricity generation, cost, waste management, spent fuel, must be clear to the public. And also, very strict rules and regulations. That is the issue. You must have very strict rules and regulations in the region that where you're going to put nucleus on. Dr. Gopi mentioned about non-proliferation. I think in ASEAN we already look into what you call the Chon phase. The Chon phase already protect this issue on safeguards and non-proliferation among others. And in ASEAN we look also into deeply under the framework of the IAEA and or even the ANSN. I think you know it already, no? The ASEAN network on nuclear on subsystem network. To guarantee safety, it is one step that we're going to go for IAEA. And lastly, Madam Chair, I think if you look at China is one of our ASEAN +3 framework. China is going to build the NPP at the rate of 2 plants per year from now. 2 plants per year, maybe close to ASEAN even. Because of they have to meet their demand growth in electricity. You cannot stop that growth. So in summary here, if you cannot stop one country, for example, allow me to mention one country like Vietnam. Vietnam, they have a different system among other in terms of controllable factor. I don't want to mention how, but Vietnam can move along nuclear very aggressively, I tell you. And if Vietnam insists to build, who's going to stop, right? So with all that, that's why all countries look into, oh, you stop, we will, I will, and then what happened? I think if we cannot stop this, we must go for another scenario where we have to set up very, very strong cooperation in preventing any problem in the region. If Vietnam build, I think Vietnam already announced the site already. And that site actually is not far from Thailand. My house is in Ubon Ratchathani province. My house maybe only 200 miles from that power plant. So this is the thing that we have to think in global first. If you look at one individual country, you cannot solve the problem. If Cambodia built up the power plant, it's even maybe less than 100 miles from my house in the northeast of Thailand. So with all that, if we have to go for it, we have to have a very strong cooperation. And maybe that's the way to go for the Southeast Asia. To answer, should Southeast Asia go nuclear or not? I think in ASEAN, there's no NIMBY. Everywhere is a NIMBY. So I would say in global that I think top-down decision and bottom-up decision must be met systematically, efficiently, in order to perhaps for the green and clean nuclear, along with other options, energy efficiency, and all other alternatives. So with all that, this question is difficult to answer. So we need many rounds of discussion from now. And like I said, it's a time-consuming process. So this is just a start. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, a gentleman in the dark blue jacket. Yes, please, and then followed by the one behind. Yes, please.
Thanks. I'm William Kuchera from the University of Dundee. And I just have a question for Dr. Tara, because I spent quite a lot of time on infrastructure projects in Indonesia in the last few years, and I was fascinated by something you mentioned, the declaration by Islamic leaders that nuclear power is haram in Central Java. Have you considered sending these leaders to Iran to speak with Mr. Ahmadinejad, perhaps? Thank you.
This is going to be a very sensitive issue. And when we are working with Muslim community in Central Java, we have to avoid the fact that because of Iran nuclear project has been very controversial. So it is not really the clear cut between. I mean, because we at the beginning we want to support the declaration from Islamic leader in Central Java on building a nuclear power plant in a very sensitive area, and we are not going to touch upon Iran issue. So it is not going to answer your question, but is it very sensitive?
Thank you. That was an ideological question. Yes, please, gentleman in the back.
I'm Ramesh Oruganti. I'm from the Faculty of Engineering at NUS. I have a comment and a question. The comment is about the gentleman's thing. I was very happy that he raised the energy efficiency issue. Very happy about it. But about how energy efficiency perhaps cuts across many disciplines, and so it's not as attractive as a single technology or a single panacea like a nuclear energy or something. So that's probably why it does not get as much attention as otherwise it deservingly should. And the question is about, again, the nuclear waste management. Mr. Fumio didn't get to finish his talk. Perhaps he was planning to cover that. I did not see many slides on the waste disposal. So when the cost-benefit analysis is done, is that taken into account when the thing is done, or is it just left to the government and the users to manage? That's one thing. So when they say nuclear energy is so cheap, is that taken into account? Second is for the whole panel, how about the equity of the whole thing? In other words, the current generation enjoys the benefit while the future generations, I don't know how difficult it is to manage the thing. I'm keeping my mind open on nuclear issue. Frankly, I've not gone either way in my mind. But how fair is it for the current generation to enjoy the nuclear energy and then leave the waste to be managed for a few thousand years onwards? Is that fair? Is that possible? So that's two questions that I would like to raise.
Okay. Mr. Fumio, would you like to address the question of nuclear waste management, and also to the panel, equity? Future generations are paying for the enjoyment of today. Mr. Fumio, please.
One is waste management, and the other is costs of the future. And concerning waste management, frankly speaking, there is no definite waste management, especially the spent fuel management is now open, I think. But in Japanese case, some of the waste spent fuel is reprocessed and reused the spent fuel, and some of them are now keep as a intermediate storage. But Japanese policy is in the future, all the spent fuel will be reprocessed and reused, and so the amount of the waste, radio waste, is very small. So after make it small, Japanese government decided to such a radio waste storage under the ground. But until now, this is not decided where to bury it.
Factored into the costing of the electricity price. That was my question.
Of course, this cost is counted into electricity price.
Who pays for it?
Who?
Who pays for that extra cost? Is it passed on to the consumer?
user, all the people, the national people, pay the treatment of the waste. And I showed a picture. Unfortunately, I can't hand over this material, but these costs are contained in the price of electricity power.
So,
And my question about the equity between the current generation and the future.
yes, the fairness question, generations in the future are going to pay for enjoyment of energy availability today, and it's for the rest of the panel.
Yeah, for everybody.
Bearing in mind that in the future we're going to hit 10 billion people. Anybody in the panel? Yes,
I'll take that question. When we talk about nuclear waste, there are two options. One is to take the entire spent fuel and bury it in ground in deep geological repository. And of course, you have hundreds of fission products with varying half-lives, so there has to be a careful separation to manage the heat load that would be arising from the spent fuel. But in terms of volume, if you look at the US case, the Yucca Mountain repository is designed to accept the lifetime waste generated by 103 commercial nuclear reactors and their military programs. So that entire amount is about 70,000 metric tons, which is quite small in terms of volume. If you look at the amount of carbon dioxide which we are just pumping into the atmosphere at the rate of 7 to 8 billion tons without even worrying about the long-term consequence, I would say in terms of volume it's far lesser. But the cost, about the question of fairness, I think it's a deeper philosophical issue, because if our prehistoric or maybe the generation which just emerged after hunting and gathering had not invented agriculture, then and put CO2 in the atmosphere, then it would have the Earth would have slipped into an ice age. So in a sense, we owe this warming to this inadvertent invention of agriculture. And so, in a sense, I believe in the human resilience that the future generation will be able to solve that problem. But the question of fairness, this is even more stark in the case of global warming compared to nuclear waste, because in a case where we clearly know that it's going to harm a generation which is just 50 or 100 years from now, it doesn't make sense to worry about the potential impact of a possible leak of radioactive waste 10,000 years from now or 10 million years from now. So in a sense, it is so far into the future, because there will always be a way to burn those waste, because there is always a technically expensive option for burning the nuclear waste in fast spectrum reactors, which could burn most of the actinides generated in the spent fuel. So in that sense, I think it is, compared to global warming caused by fossil fuels, I think this would be a much lesser problem in terms of if we are talking about intergenerational fairness and equity.
Yes, please, the gentleman in the middle, please.
My name is Guy Hench. I'm Swiss. I'm retired. I've spent 20 years at CERN in Geneva, which is a laboratory for particle physics, fundamental research. I have a purely factual question to address to Mr. Murata and Mr. Gopi. Have they heard, and what do they think of the project which is named Energy Amplifier? Is that something you have heard about? And if so, what do you think? I'm not a physicist, so I will not venture to explain. But in a nutshell, nuclear fission can be controlled by a particle accelerator and remain subcritical, which prevents a Chernobyl-type accident. It runs on thorium, so it creates very little radioactive waste. And on top of running on thorium, it can also burn existing wastes. Now, my question is, I never hear about this in the discussion like today, and I wonder why. Thank you.
Would you like to reply, Mr. Murata?
I'm sorry.
Maybe
I can't catch up the real question. I'm sorry.
Okay, Professor Gopi, please, will respond.
I think the idea of energy amplifier was pioneered by one of the CERN, I think a Nobel Prize winner. I don't remember the name, but Rubia, yeah, Carlos Rubia, where he proposed a subcritical system which can never lead to a loss of coolant accident. So in terms of safety, there are a lot of attractive features in an energy amplifier. But the nuclear industry has not taken any major interest in developing this into a commercially viable system, because like accelerator-driven waste destruction and fusion and breeders, this particular energy solution doesn't appear viable, commercially viable in the near term, especially in the term over the course of 30 to 50 years. So we are looking this as an essentially a potential option beyond 2050. But I'm not aware of any companies, major nuclear companies, taking interest in commercializing this technology proposed by Carlos Rubia.
Any insight as to why there's no interest in pursuing this, Gopi?
Ultimately, it's a question of, it has to do with the price of uranium, because as long as the world has enough cheap uranium, then options like reprocessing, in the case of Japan and France, the motivation for reprocessing is quite different. It doesn't have to do with saving uranium, because the policy to reprocess was taken in the 60s and 70s when there was a concern that the world will run out of conventional uranium, but it didn't happen because the world has discovered more uranium, and uranium prices have fallen off after the end of the Cold War. So the original motivation which drove all these programs are no longer existent in the current scenario. So like that, as long as for example, if the world were to expand its nuclear capacity by a factor of 10, I think that would surely deplete cheap uranium during our lifetime. And then we will talk about all these alternative options like energy amplifier and breeding and reprocessing to keep the nuclear enterprise going far beyond than that would be guaranteed by uranium supplies. The short answer is, as long as the world has enough cheap uranium, all the alternatives is not going to
It's not a question of economics, it's a question of safety. And why would this avenue not be worth exploring?
I think and the future of fusion doesn't appear to be a short-term energy solution. So it's the same issue there.
It's not. Fission and fusion, both, I mean, new technology will demand time. That's absolutely clear to me. But I wonder why there is perhaps a problem of lobbying. When you have in the world 450 nuclear plants, and it's a huge investment, I can imagine that governments or companies are not very favorable to any alternative. And if this is a reason, hidden more or less, I find it scandalous. Thank you.
Maybe just a short answer to that is, the French built a multi-billion-dollar Phoenix breeder reactor, and they shut down in the late 1990s because it was unsustainable, because the Phoenix had a very long it had to undergo extensive shutdowns due to operational issues and safety issues. And basically, it was not generating electricity for more than 60% of the time, so it was not sustainable. So the French government purchased it for 1 franc. So it was that, so a multi-billion-dollar facility was purchased for 1 franc, and that would give an indication of whether breeder reactors are going to be sustainable in the near future. And if you look at fusion, fusion facilities take of the order of a few billions to construct. For example, the tokamak reactor in Princeton and the other version, which is maintained by the Russian, they all cost billions of dollars. And the ITER project is supposed to cost about $10 billion. And they will generate zero electricity. And for generating zero net electricity, I don't think it will be of any interest to commercial interest. So unless it is proved viable, technically viable, unless it is proven as commercially viable, these alternatives